FC Barcelona entered the summer transfer window with lofty ambitions, hoping to bolster their squad with new signings that could help them regain their status as one of the world's elite clubs. However, the financial constraints stemming from La Liga's financial fair play (FFP) regulations severely limited their options. Ultimately, Barcelona only managed to secure two notable additions to their senior team roster: Dani Olmo from RB Leipzig and Pau Victor, who was signed permanently from Girona. While the signings of Olmo and Victor were seen as positive moves, Barcelona's sporting management, under the guidance of director Deco, had a much longer list of targets in mind. However, the financial restrictions imposed by FFP meant that their ambitious plans would remain largely unfulfilled. The club's dire financial situation, exacerbated by previous overspending, put the brakes on several high-profile deals that were in the works. Among the players who were reportedly on Deco's radar was Chelsea midfielder Carney Chukwuemeka. However, this transfer never came to fruition, as Barcelona's FFP predicament, combined with the emergence of promising young talents like Marc Bernal and Marc Casado, meant that pursuing Chukwuemeka would have been impossible. But the Chelsea midfielder wasn't the only Premier League star that Deco had set his sights on. As the summer window wore on, Barcelona's search for reinforcements took another interesting turn when it emerged that the club had shown interest in signing Brazilian centre-back Diego Carlos from Aston Villa. According to reports from Sport, the transfer saga surrounding Carlos sheds light on just how far Barcelona was willing to go in their quest to improve their squad, despite the financial hurdles. Barcelona's defensive dilemma. The decision to pursue Diego Carlos in the summer of 2023 came at a crucial moment for Barcelona, as they were dealing with significant injuries to key defensive players. Ronald Araujo, a central figure in the defense, had suffered a serious injury while playing for Uruguay during the Copa America. His absence was expected to last well into 2024, which left Barcelona's defensive unit dangerously thin. To make matters worse, Andreas Christensen, another vital component of the Barcelona defense, was also struggling with an Achilles tendon issue. It was later revealed that Christensen would require surgery, further depleting Barcelona's defensive options. With the start of the season rapidly approaching and a new head coach, Hansi Flick, taking over at the helm, the club needed to act fast. Flick was keen on strengthening the defensive line, and his priorities aligned with Deco's objectives. A new centre-back was essential for Barcelona to remain competitive across multiple fronts in the upcoming season, and ideally, this player would have experience in La Liga to ensure a smoother transition. Diego Carlos, a Premier League option. In the final weeks of August, Barcelona began to intensify their efforts to find a suitable defensive reinforcement. As Barcelona had already identified Diego Carlos as a potential target, Deco and the club's sporting management reached out to the Brazilian international's camp to gauge his interest in a move to Catalonia. Carlos had enjoyed a successful spell in Spain with Sevilla FC, where he had become one of the most highly regarded defenders in La Liga. His commanding presence in the back line and his ability to read the game had made him a standout performer for Sevilla, and it was clear why Barcelona saw him as a natural fit for their defensive needs. Reports indicated that Carlos was open to the idea of joining Barcelona. The move would have represented a significant step up in his career, as the Brazilian would have been playing for one of the most prestigious clubs in Europe. At the time, Barcelona seemed to be the perfect landing spot for Carlos to continue his career at the highest level. However, despite the optimism surrounding the potential deal, there were significant obstacles that stood in the way. As Barcelona's financial issues became clearer, it became increasingly apparent that they would not have the necessary funds to complete a deal for Carlos. Even though the club had hoped to bring in a player of Carlos's caliber on a loan deal, the lack of available financial flexibility made that goal unachievable. The loan strategy and FFP restrictions. In their efforts to strengthen the squad, Barcelona had no choice but to focus on loan deals that would not impact the club's already fragile financial situation. Given the FFP limitations, Deco and Barcelona's management explored every possible avenue to bring in new faces without breaching the regulations. However, the club's efforts to sign a high-profile player like Diego Carlos on loan were thwarted by the financial realities of the situation. This was not an isolated case. Barcelona's approach throughout the summer window was centered around pursuing loan deals for players who could make an immediate impact. These players would ideally have prior experience in La Liga to minimize the time needed for adaptation, and the hope was that they would be able to provide cover for the injured players. While Carlos was one of the first defenders to be targeted, Barcelona also considered other potential options to shore up their defense. One name that emerged in the conversation was Jonathan Tah, a German center-back playing for Bayer Leverkusen. However, despite discussions with Tah's representatives, the club was unable to finalize a deal for the player, with Barcelona shifting their focus to other priorities. The shifting landscape of Barcelona's transfer plans. As the summer transfer window wound down and Barcelona's financial constraints remained firmly in place, it became clear that the club's transfer plans had been significantly impacted by their inability to register new players. This was especially frustrating for a club like Barcelona, which had hoped to make a splash in the market and bring in the necessary reinforcements to challenge for domestic and European glory. With the failure to land Carlos and other high-profile targets, the situation highlighted just how precarious Barcelona's position was in terms of financial health. The club's mounting debts and reliance on short-term solutions had created a cycle of financial instability that hampered their ability to strengthen the squad. Instead of signing established stars, Barcelona was forced to place their faith in younger, less proven talents who could fit into their budget constraints. The aftermath: Diego Carlos's move to Fenerbahce. As Barcelona's pursuit of Diego Carlos ultimately fell apart, the Brazilian defender found himself in the midst of a new transfer saga. While Barcelona had once been a potential destination, Carlos eventually moved to the Turkish Super League, where he joined Jose Mourinho's Fenerbahce on a permanent deal. It was a far cry from the high-profile move to Barcelona that had once seemed so promising. In many ways, Carlos's journey encapsulates the broader struggles that FC Barcelona faced during the summer transfer window of 2023. Financial issues, compounded by a lack of flexibility in the market, prevented the club from making the moves they had hoped for. While the signings of Dani Olmo and Pau Victor were positive steps, they were not enough to fully address the squad's needs, and the failure to land key targets like Carlos left Barcelona fans wondering what could have been. The summer transfer window of 2023 will be remembered as one of missed opportunities for FC Barcelona. Despite the best efforts of Deco and the sporting management team, the financial realities of FFP ultimately dictated the club's decisions and prevented them from making the signings they so desperately needed. For Barcelona, the road ahead will be challenging as they continue to navigate the complexities of financial management, while trying to rebuild a squad capable of competing for top honors. The club will need to make the most of their existing resources, focus on developing young talent, and explore creative solutions in future transfer windows if they are to return to their former glory. While the summer of 2023 was a setback, Barcelona's resilience and ambition will be tested in the seasons to come.